So here is the formula for creating your compelling story, the story that creates emotional connection with your audience. Now, I'm going to keep it very simple for the sake of this exercise in Module 3. Don't worry about the details right now. Don't go really deep into into details. I don't want to overwhelm you with the details yet. It's going to come in the next module. In Module 4, we're going to add layers to your story. But as of now, keep in mind that it's going to be fun, simple, very doable, and I challenge you to do it within 1 hour frame. So as is, using the formula I'm going to give to you. So here is the formula. Step 1, set up the scene. Think about your story as the movie or as the theater scene. When you go to the theater, if you've ever been there, the curtain rise up, right? And then what you see really draws your attention. So it puts you on the edge of your seat immediately. That's the effect you want to have by painting the picture with your words. In other words, setting the scene for your story for that ideal client who is sitting across the table from you, imaginary client, right now. So write that opening scene for him or her. And when you're doing that, it's important to keep in mind that you keep it in present tense, and you add as many details as possible, including your feelings, including the colors you see around you, describing the place where you are, so that the person who doesn't know what you're talking about can place and be and experience the same feelings that you are experiencing right now when you're sharing your story. Let me give you an example. When I do my presentations, I usually go from the beginning. And so I'm laying down in the cot, and I am 5-year-old, and now it's the nap time, and all the boys are misbehaving. They're really loud, screaming at each other, and here I am laying down, doing nothing, just keeping my eyes open, looking at the ceiling and daydreaming about my future life and how I've always been a big dreamer. So it's one of these pleasant moments that I'm using for myself, and all of a sudden the angry face that I see in front of me, close to me, it's my kindergarten teacher, who is saying with the mean expression on her face, "Jana, during the nap time, we're not keeping our eyes open. And if you don't understand that, you're gonna get this." And she gets the wet towel and wraps around my eyes. And I'm laying down thinking, what did I do wrong? I'm not worthy of being loved. I am questioning my own existence. And if I can't get the love of this one woman, I probably don't deserve it. So that's the opening scene for me, and you will hear more from my story later. But just to give you an idea, so step number 1, set the scene in the present time and really emotionally connect with that, so that your listener is going to connect with that too. Step number 2, go into the credibility. Now, of course, there should be a transition, but even if you lack that transition or you're not sure what transition to use, it's okay. For the sake of this exercise, just go into the credibility. You're positioning yourself as an expert in the field that is related to your topic or your message. So it could be your educational level, it could be your area of expertise and all the achievements and awards you have in that area, something that is relevant to the topic and the message you're trying to convey now. And it's all in your lifetime, and you've done all the work. Just pull and pick. pick, like pick and choose, and you color code it so everything is already in patterns, so you can just pick the ones that are relevant to your story. Now, once you establish your credibility, you kind of start with the end in mind. This is where you are right now. And it's one way to say this, to tell the story. This is my personal approach to that. So I usually start with the credibility, and then I go back to how it all started. So now, after you create if your credibility and positioning of yourself, it has to be very clear, concise, to the point, and relevant to your topic and your message. And then you go into vulnerability. Vulnerability is your human side, and that's what creates the emotional connection with your audience. It's the feeling. Remember how during the lifeline exercise I told you, put the feelings that you were experiencing when you were actually in that event, right? So you already have all the information. All you need is just to pull the right pieces out of it. And so when you create the vulnerability, it's your deep dive. Some people call it the pit of the story, where the pains and frustrations and what was the other one, the fears of your ideal customer, which you already have in your avatar, are relevant to the fears, frustrations, and pains that you were feeling when you were experiencing that or lived through that event in your life, right? It doesn't have to be something grand or major, right? Nobody killed anyone. It doesn't have to be such a dramatic story, but you still need to touch and go into this emotions that you were experiencing that were not comfortable. And that's a part that is a little tricky. When I create the stories, the songs for the business owners, some of them, or most of them, are very famous people, and they're very well established. So for them, when I'm asking them for their vulnerability moments, just like you guys, it's really difficult to pull it out of them because they don't want to go there because it's too painful. And I understand that, but since you've already done the work, I want you to be ready to actually reveal it publicly. You don't have to go too deep. You can go as much as you want, where your comfort zone is. And if vulnerability or showing your vulnerability is not something that you are used to, well, there's no way around that. If you want people to resonate with you, you gotta show your human side. You can't be all macho, because we know it's not true, and people will know it's not true. In fact, if you're not showing your vulnerability, there's no emotional connection. Because if it's all about, oh, this is the degree that I have, these are all my achievements, I have so many medals, and I'm so very well recognized in my field, they are going to be disconnected with you because they are not there yet. And there is no common point where they can say, she really gets me, or he really gets me. He understands what I'm going through. So you got to create that bridge to for understanding. And that's going to be in your vulnerability. So go into this deep dive, as I call it, or the pit of the story, and show and share the beliefs that you had about yourself. See, it's so beautiful because you already have all of that in your lifeline. So do that and create one. It doesn't have to be one, by the way. So let me do a side note right here. If you go into the pit of your story, and then you are talking, of course, about the breakthrough. So let's say you were miserable, right? And all of a sudden something happened and now you are where you are. That's not the story. That's the breakthrough. So this is the pit, this is the breakthrough, and boom, that's your story. It's too boring. You want to captivate people with your story. It might be enough for a shorter version of it, but for the full version, I want you to have more than you need right now and to put all the events on paper and all the events and the sequence of the events relevant to your topic and message again in alignment with them, one after another. Formula for creating your vulnerability is this: you go into the pit, right? You go into the deep dive, and then you tell about the breakthrough, how you got the breakthrough out of that deep dive. And then, oops, you have another deep dive, right? Because life happens, and then you have another breakthrough. It doesn't have to be grand. Actually, it's really interesting when it's in small increments, and you could take one specific skill or one specific fear and then go into another that are all, by the way, in this avatar, right? The fears, frustrations, and pains that your audience is feeling, and the same was going with you, right? So you take one breakthrough, one breakthrough, one breakthrough. So that creates the journey of your evolution to the point where you are right now. But you kind of started from the end. This is where I am right now, but my journey has not always been like that. And it started, boom, and you go into this vulnerability. So this is your moment to create it. And then the next step, the last step, will be creating this bridge to call to action. It could be before you do call to action, depending on the objective, depending on your intention and the goal of telling the story. Your call to action is going to be at the end, and inspire them at the end of your story by saying, using a quote from the poem. You can sing if you're a singer. You can really powerfully end it. You can ask a question that they can end with, saying it together, as a chorus, right? Or it could be a resounding yes or resounding yes together as a group. And that would be the end of your story part, but then you go into the call to action later. So I hope you understand that. So let's reiterate what we just said. Number one, what are the components of the story? Number one, you set the scene. Number two, you create your credibility and you share your credibility. Position yourself clear, precise, relevant to the topic and the message. Number three, you go into your vulnerability, which is your pit or the deep dive, and then breakthrough. It could be a series of them. Deep dive and a breakthrough. Pick from your lifeline, look for the patterns that you already identified there, and take the relevant pieces that you put in the story that build up and build up and build up to your desired outcome. And then leave out the rest. And then the last piece is call to action, really bonding, inspiration, and really powerful ending. That's all you need to know just for now, because in the next module we're gonna add layers to your story after you already have the first completed draft on paper for yourself. Enjoy, have fun, relax into that, and I will see you in module 4. Bye for now.